This week on the Pro Wrestling Podcast, Chris Jericho has some guy on talking about fucking and raping dead bodies. The New Day shits their pants. Mrs. Brodie Lee, Amanda Huber, walks us through Brodie Lee's tragic final days. And Bruce Pritchard is alive and well, and Something to Wrestle is back. Kind of. I'm your host, Seth Grimes, and this is the Pro Wrestling Podcast. The WWE Network has been officially sold. Well, not sold, but it's been licensed out for the next 5 years. The WWE Network will no longer be the WWE Network, at least not in the United States, as they have signed a $1 billion deal for 5 years with NBC Universal to put the WWE Network, the entire WWE Network, pay-per-views, fucking Monday Night Wars, fucking Jim Cornette's, Jim Crockett's, fucking all of it, the whole history, everything, on PEACOCK Premium, as a matter of fact, which is $5 or $5.99 for with ads. So if you're okay with watching a few commercials, you're used to it on YouTube, that kind of thing, then you can go over to PEACOCK starting this March. You could sign up for $5. Half the price you're paying now for the WWE Network, get the full WWE Network, and get all of PEACOCK shit, all the movies, all the TV shows, all of it. A lot of that shit's what they pulled off of Netflix. If you notice, like if you're an Office fan, that kind of thing, you're noticing this stuff's gone now. It's on PEACOCK because NBC owns it. And now they're in their own network game. And now they're in the business of buying up shit. This has become a business. The streaming service business is really a fun business to learn about because and to watch unfold in real time. And we're still in its infancy, right? We're watching streaming take over cable television as we know it. So as we see less and less people watching live TV, and that's why WWE gets so much. They get these big $1 billion deals with the networks, even though their ratings drop every year and their show sucks, is because it's still must-watch live TV. Kind of must-watch. If it was in its heyday, it would be must-watch. But you get what I'm saying. You have to be there to see it, you know. It's not a rerun TV show or anything. Like, this is live. This is happening now. Anything can happen. And that draws a premium, at least for now it does. But the game is changing. Less and less people are watching network TV. Even like it started with the younger kids in the cord cutting, but now it's filtered all the way up to the grandmas and shit. Like people are cutting the cord. And that's just the way that the entertainment business is going. That's just how people are consuming media nowadays, right? That and YouTube, that kind of thing. And people can watch it on their own time. They don't need to be there for 5 o'clock or 8 o'clock or whenever the fuck the show starts, right? So now that they have that option, these networks are jumping in the game. And what it looked like before that this was going to be sort of a, every network or every brand has their own streaming service, right? UFC has their thing, WWE has their thing. You go over to whatever, Disney started theirs or two, right? But now what it's looking like this is going to become, because there were rumors that Disney was in the talks to buy WWE too. And that might still happen. Don't rule it out. This is the company that's buying up fucking Star Wars and Marvel and all these properties. Disney, in all likelihood, should, if Vince McMahon dies and depending on what happens with the WWE, if it was to be sold off, right, I trust it in the hands of Disney. That might be a bold statement, but, I feel like a Disney could really, really work with a Hulk Hogan property, an Andre the Giant property, even a Stone Cold. John Cena, I think they'll take care of that intellectual property better than most companies could. But I'm sidetracking, right? PEACOCK, 5-year deal with the WWE Network. What I'm getting at here is these big companies are scooping up the littler ones. They're scooping up the content. And Disney, I know we're talking about Peacock and NBC and all that shit, but just bear with me. Disney restructured their entire corporation, the entire company, to focus focus its main energy on streaming. Streaming is prioritized within Disney now above all else. And that has just recently changed. They've restructured it that way. This is the future. Streaming. This is where all the networks are going to be. This is where all the content's going to be. And instead of seeing a bunch of smaller little brands with their own streaming content like an Impact does, right? They have their own thing, New Japan. I think we're going to start to see bigger companies buy up all the little ones, buy up their content. And we're going to have just a handful, 2, 3, 4 streaming sites that are going to own everything that you ever want to watch or have watched, or it's just all going to be in one place. Minus like a YouTube, right? Unless you consider them like the 4. You know, there's Disney, there's going to be Netflix still, though I do think Netflix is slipping. You know, I haven't even watched them in a long time, except for I started watching that Night Stalker series that they got. But other than that, I haven't really been drawn to anything on Netflix. But Disney, they're in the game. They bought Hulu, or majority share of Hulu anyway. So, and ESPN, they're really the ones to watch, scooping up all these brands. But other companies are going to follow suit, and they're going to take that lead. And you're going to see companies like an NBC Universal want to invest in a WWE. Maybe it is just licensing the brand for now, like they're doing. They're not buying the network, but they're licensing it. But that opens up the option of WWE renegotiating for a higher rate in 5 years, or going to a different company in 5 years, getting bought out by Disney in 5 years, or just going back to their own network. They're still keeping the network internationally, at least for now, unless they find deals there. So they're going to have that infrastructure in place still. They're not taking it all down. They're just going to take it down for United States people, which is crazy when you think about it, but that's the way that the industry is going, and that's a big scoop up for NBC, and you're going to be able to get it for half the price, plus all the other content. And if you want to go no commercials, you could just keep paying your $10, and you're going to get the WWE Network plus all of Peacock's premium content. And if you're an Xfinity user, guess what? You get it for free. You get it for free. You know, I haven't actually tested it out to see if it's the ad-free version or not, but I know I just signed up, and it just plug in your Xfinity shit into the website, and it bada bing, bada boom, and there you are. You're free. So this happens March 18th-ish, but folks, this is a big deal. This is going to be crazy shit. This is a game changer for the industry in general, not just wrestling, but media, entertainment, streaming. This is a big get, and it'll be interesting to see what other kind of moves are made in the next 5 years with other companies, and where WWE lands in 5 years. It's all good shit, folks. It's all good shit, and it's changing, so we're along for the ride. He's alive. Bruce Pritchard is alive and well, ladies and gentlemen, back behind a podcast microphone, and it just feels like home. After 2 weeks of no podcast, we get a surprise Sunday podcast. Conrad in the driver's seat, Bruce sitting shotgun, telling stories about Shane McMahon. It was fucking beautiful. Fucking beautiful.
Hello?
Hey, can I speak to Bruce, please?
Hold on, let me check. Hey, Bruce! Bruce!
What?
It's Conrad.
You tell him I'm not here. I'm busy.
Conrad, he said he's not here.
Wait, shit, is he on the line right now?
I can see him.
Is he on the line?
You realize
Conrad, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, and I can hear him.
Shoot, sorry.
Stephanie, do you realize
my office? What are you doing in here? I got work to do.
I was checking the email.
Well, hey, what are you doing, man? I've been waiting. You know, are you finally able to do a show?
Is Is this a rib?
No, that was a make good for the past 2 weeks. We missed. Did we get him again on Friday, though? No. Missing in action again. But hey, we got the Royal Rumble coming up. This man basically runs the creative end of the company, production and shit. So we'll give him a pass. But at what point does something to wrestle fizzle out because of this whole WWE thing? Or at what point does it just get outright canceled? Because now we're skipping weeks at a time. And that's just something in the podcast world. You can miss time a little bit here and there, but when you're creating content in general, YouTube videos, any of that shit, you don't want to just start missing weeks, right? For example, now Something to Wrestle is one of the biggest podcasts on the planet, in the wrestling world at least, right? So it'll probably be able to withstand quite a bit of shit. But, and we understand, we might bitch as wrestling fans, but we get it. We know what's going on. We fully understand, right? Vince is very demanding of your time. But it's starting to take its toll on the podcast, the whole WWE thing with Bruce. And you know, the podcast is, it's weird to say this because it's just a podcast, right? But the podcast is what brought Bruce to the dance. He was out of the business completely, 100%. And the podcast brought him back. The podcast made him a star again. The podcast became very successful, very lucrative, and it led to him getting his job back with WWE. So I think even though there's a certain level of understanding and it's the WWE and he's running the shit basically, so it's really honestly much bigger than a podcast, but we all know how WWE works, and Bruce is going to be out on his ass in a year or two anyway, and he wants a podcast to come home to, right? He doesn't want to burn that bridge and close that off and fuck all that up and then just end up getting fired by Vince again, and then what? So I think I'm just kind of overreaching here. I don't think any of this is necessarily going to happen, but just saying, when you start missing 2 weeks in a row, throw a random Sunday out there and then just miss the next Friday, I don't know, man. It's Royal Rumble time. Give them a pass, but get your shit together, bro. Something to Wrestle used to drop every Friday. Now it's just, I don't know, just follow it and it'll pop up when it pops up. If you had raping dead bodies as a subject for a pro wrestling podcast this week, you are the winner. Chris Jericho had a serial killer expert on his podcast this week, and they had great in-depth conversation on all of the famous serial killers, the Dahmers and Gacy's and Bundys of the world. I always love this kind of, I'm a big true crime fan. Definitely, if you're into true crime in any way at all, absolutely go out of your way to listen to this podcast. But check out this clip right here.
That's why all these serial killers are necrophiles, because a serial killer must have control. That is at the core of a serial killer's being, control over the whole outside world. So what does a serial killer do? He has sex with its corpse. Why? Because guess what a corpse can never say? No. Jeffrey Dahmer, and then at the extreme, even beyond killing and even beyond sex with a corpse, is the ingestion of material from the corpse. What did Jeffrey Dahmer do? Jeffrey Dahmer wore pieces of the corpses around him like clothing. Jeffrey Dahmer had skulls stashed in his refrigerator. It's the ultimate control. Ted Bundy would revisit his the burial sites of his victims and see how quickly they were decomposing. And the ones that were decomposing slower, he'd have sex with them.
I mean, so if you were going to rape a dead body, like, what do you do to get yourself aroused first? Are you aroused by the dead body itself? I got to imagine it stinks. I got to imagine there's bugs. I got to imagine it's not the most pleasant. They probably shit their pants, all right? So this is not going to be the most pleasant of experiences. And if you're aroused by a thing like that, I mean, I'm not one to judge you, by all means, do you, bro. But I'm just saying, it's probably not the most exciting aphrodisiac in the world to see maggots crawling out of your girlfriend's face. You know what I'm saying? You can check out the Chris Jericho podcast, Talk Is Jericho, twice a week, every Wednesday, every Friday, on the same app where you find all of your podcasts. You know the place. Just go look. Amanda Huber, the wife of the late, great Brodie Lee, John Huber, Luke Harper, whatever you want to call him. The wife of Brodie Lee was on the AEW podcast this week, and she had requested the time to speak on the podcast to kind of clear things up, because she had been getting a lot of shit online, especially from Bruce Mitchell, formerly of the Pro Wrestling Torch, till they shit-canned his ass for being a douchebag, and, insinuating that the family was hiding things, that Brodie really had COVID and they were just covering it up, and that he was potentially, or they, in covering it up, were potentially putting other people at risk. And Amanda very nicely had spoken about this on Twitter a couple times. She addressed it, tried to clear things up, but she wanted to take this time to really tell the full story of exactly what happened to Brodie. And here's a clip from this podcast.
Everybody has thought it was COVID since the jump. And even in the first few days we were at Mayo Clinic, they thought it was COVID. Mm-hmm. I have pictures of me in full PPE to be in his room because they thought it was COVID. So I had to have the N95, I had to have the hairnet, I had to have literally full PPE to be in his room.
Sure.
Every COVID test came back negative. To the point where I was like, can we just get a positive one? Just so we have a fucking answer.
What's going on?
Seriously.
Right.
Seriously.
I just want an answer. That's all I want. And they did a bronchial wash at one point, and the one doctor was telling me that at Mayo Clinic, they've had a couple of cases where people would test negative for COVID, and then they'd do a bronchial wash, and they'd find it residing deep in the lungs. So they were like, oh, that's what it's going to be.
Right. Negative.
Every fucking test was negative, and it was like, what is this? There's just not not 100% sure, because I actually don't have the autopsy report yet, but I believe the official diagnosis was idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, which literally means that his lungs scarred up, and the idiopathic part means they don't fucking know why. They don't know what happened to his lungs, but they know his lungs were just completely scarred over. And the doctor came in and talked to me, and he basically was like, he needs a lung transplant or end-of-life care.
Man, it's hard to listen to, but I admire Amanda. She sounds like a very strong woman. She is able to still laugh, and she's still able to find a way to find some sort of enjoyment in life. It seems like she's doing okay. We don't know what happens behind closed doors, but she definitely seems like a very strong woman, and the whole story is just really sad, and what the fuck happened, they still don't fully know, and that's disturbing, because one day you could be smashing Cody Rhodes in the face with a big steel chain defending your championship on national TV, and the next day you are laying in a hospital bed with a tube in your neck, artificially pumping your blood for you because you can't breathe or get oxygen in. And the man had kids, and we spent a good amount of time around Christmas as wrestling fans kind of living in the sadness of this, so I don't want to get too deep into that. As a matter of fact, I'd actually delayed the release of this podcast, the debut of it, because the first week I was going to do it was the week that he died. Or, the first week of the new year is when it was going to launch, and all anything was talking about was the death of Brodie Lee. And that's just, it's not a way you want to start a show, but, it's not something I want to spend a lot of time talking about, trying to bring everybody down and be sad. But I think everybody needs to take the time to listen to this podcast just to have a full understanding of what exactly happened to Brodie in the last days of his life, and to really be inspired by Amanda, because she's a strong woman, and you can tell and you can hear it when she speaks. And it's inspiring, because I don't know that I could, in her shoes, be that strong myself. So absolutely go out of your way to listen to Amanda Huber on the AEW Unrestricted podcast. Drops every Thursday, everywhere podcasts are found. Highly recommend. On the New Day Feel the Power podcast this week, the whole podcast was just poop and pee stories the whole time. Sorry. You'd think it'd be gross, but this whole fucking podcast is hilarious. It's just story after story after story about people just shitting their pants. People walking into bathroom stalls that have exploded, and fucking just chaos. Just listen.
You go to a different place overseas, and like the water and the water and the meals and everything, like your stomach doesn't agree with them. So my stomach was doing just that. And I'm holding it so hard, man, like so hard. And like all in discomfort and uncomfortable position, just trying so hard. And it felt like I was holding it for a good, I don't know, hour and a half, 2 hours. I'm like, surely we must be almost there. We got to be close. I said, Ma, how much time do we have? I said, I don't know, at least a couple hours. I said, still? I said, there's no way. There's just no way. I've given it all I can. Like, I don't have any more endurance. And I'm just sitting there like, Mom, what am I going to do? Like, he's like, sorry, we can't stop, son. And I look up at her. I remember making eye contact with her. She looks at me, and I look at her, and I don't, number one, like, no one wants to poop in front of their mom. Nobody wants to poop their pants, let alone in front of their mom. She's sitting right next to me at that, like legit on the seat right next to me. And I'm just looking at her, and I can't hold it. I'm sweating. It's hot. This is Africa. There's no AC on the bus. The roads are bumping. I didn't stand a chance. There's no way I was going to be able to hold it for another 2 hours. So I just had to let it go,
Were you still making eye contact with her?
Yeah, I made eye contact with her. And it was very...
You should have.
I was so ashamed. I was so ashamed. I was so ashamed. You can't just doing that in front of your mom, man. Like, it's traumatizing, bro. Like, and then on top of that, remember, we still had a couple more hours left.
That was the New Day Feel the Power. Their podcast drops every single Monday. This was actually the first time I gave it a listen. I started listening to it for this show, and I don't know if I'm sorry I did, or I don't know what the deal is, but I recommend checking out. It's good for a laugh. Speaking of the New Day, Big E was on Renee Paquette's podcast, Oral Sessions, this week, talking about his new big push as Intercontinental Champion in WWE. He also talked about a whole bunch of other things, including his love life. And when it was brought up, he got a little squeamish. Check this out.
What is your dating situation? Do you date? I mean, I know it's weird during a pandemic, and I can see you squirming.
I am a little bit. So it's a lot easier to say like, oh, I'm single when you're 24. Like, no, it's okay, because everyone, a lot of people are single when they're 24. When you're 34 and you're a perpetual bachelor, you kind of get weird looks. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, hey, I can meet my own needs, and that explains like why I'm perpetually alone. And I genuinely like being alone. I don't sit at home and pine to like be around people all the time. I'm an introvert by nature, and I have no idea how I ended up as an entertainer. It makes no sense because I just always just want to be by myself.
Save it for that red light.
Yes. But that's me. And that's kind of where I'm at with that. And I guess kind of once you can kind of realize why you're wired the way you are, it can allow you to break certain patterns. And I suppose, if a relationship is in the cards for me, so be it. But I'm starting to fall in love with me.
Oh, I love that. That's great. But I have so much to dissect about this.
Look, I get it. A guy like Big E has no time for women, no need for women. As long as he's out there getting laid and shit, why does he need to settle down? Why is there this cultural thing where once you get to a certain age, you're a fucking weirdo outcast, or maybe you're secretly gay, or maybe there's something just horrible about you that women don't like, Dude's single. He's living it up. He's a famous celebrity. Fucking get off his back. You know what I'm saying? And this is something that I always enjoy about Renee's podcast, is she likes to get into the personal stuff. She's not afraid to ask a guy about his love life, and she seems to be doing that a lot on her podcast. And, she's like that chick at work that always just wants to know, hey, what's going on in your love life? She just wants the hot goss, and in a good way, not to be a gossip, but just to, be involved, to just get in on the love life story, and see what this person's like romantically and all of that. And it's fun. I like hearing those stories. Again, Renee's podcast is great. You can check it out every single Tuesday everywhere podcasts are found, and clips are on YouTube, I do believe. Being the Elite opened with the Biz Cliz this week. Young Bucks, Gallows and Anderson in front of a green screen out in a field with a bunch of goats. This was great shit. They come in just talking about sucking cocks and cock this and cock that and cock. Listen to this clip.
What the hell are we? Oh, the suckers are here. The good suckers. Suck it. Oh, we brought that back from the dead. Just like we brought that back from the dead. Too sweet.
These guys have gotten even worse.
Too sweet.
You guys are like aliens.
Did you guys
New York has really effed your brains up.
Did you guys see what we did to that little son of a bitch? That little dickhead Penta. He's gone. We took his eye. It's gone. Gallows almost killed him.
Do you think he deserved it?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. Old school Biz Cliz, babe, right? Nobody hurts my boys.
I appreciate everything, guys. I mean, they only hit us with one single harmless super kick. You didn't have to go there and injure. I mean, he's on the shelf. Definitely.
You guys gave him a place to work and eat. He was starving. He was a starving sucker before he got here. That's what we do. That's what the original Bullet Club does. We take people out. OGs.
You're right. It's just, I mean, they are part of our tag division, and now it's one less
team for you guys. Gallows tried to drown him, for crying out loud. Yeah, I wanted to put him in the Mississippi.
You know what? You guys are right. Thanks for doing that. They super kicked us. And
what's going on, guys?
You're right. I appreciate it. It's good. It's just a little too much, but
you guys aren't getting soft on the boys.
I mean, we're executive.
Don't get soft like Pentagon's cock on us. Yeah, right.
This was a fun little skit. It's getting Gallows and Anderson over as sort of they're almost like the weird crazy uncle that no. This is the sitcom episode where the dad that's all chill now and settled down has got a family, and his old friend comes to town that's been gone, and he's like a wild biker guy, and he comes to town to visit, and he wants to relive all the crazy days back when you were Crazy Eddie, and now you're just Edward, and you're all lame and boring. What happened to you, man? And that's what's going on in this, and it's a beautiful story. Gallows and Andersons are the crazy biker uncles, and the Young Bucks are the dads that have settled down, and it's a fun story. They're continuing the story from AEW on Being the Elite, and they just to suck the cock and shit. That's just funny. Being the Elite drops every single Monday on YouTube. It's a fun show to watch. Highly recommend watching it. It's good shoulder content if you're an AEW fan. They do definitely expand storylines there, and then they just do a bunch of goofy shit too. Arn Anderson has told us all on his podcast that he recently has recovered from COVID. The motherfucking COVID. got the Enforcer laid up in bed and tripping balls. Listen to this clip.
The one that I had this past Wednesday morning, all of a sudden I had the antibodies for having COVID, which meant I had it, but at no point did I test positive for it. So what was going on in my bedroom for a week was absolutely COVID. And it was brutal, and it was hard to deal with. It was all I could do. You go days without drinking water hardly because you can't get it down. You go a week without food. It's tough.
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't want to get too much into people's medical shit, but Arn came out and admitted it to the world on the podcast, and he wanted to kind of make sure everybody was still being safe out there and all that shit. So I'm glad Arn recovered well, and I'm glad everything's good there. Arn and Conrad covered the 2016 Royal Rumble on this episode. Of course, Arn was a backstage agent at that time, and he got into the debut of AJ Styles in the WWE, the long-awaited debut. Check out this clip.
Let's talk about the next match here. It's the Rumble match, and the big surprise, of course, AJ Styles. I know you knew it was coming, but were you surprised with the reaction? Because the fans knew who he was and they were ready for it.
Nope. There are other things in this world than WWE.
Yeah.
And AJ Styles had a tremendous career up until this point, been around the world, had gained his notoriety, and had gotten over universally. And when he came out, it was one of those things that you thought you might never see, and were a little bit down about that. And all of a sudden you do get it. Everybody's not on, the internet. Everybody's not on social media. Everybody didn't know he was going to be there of your audience. And If you're sitting home on your couch and you did not have a clue, you hadn't heard a word, out comes AJ Styles. That's why I buy the Rumble.
Yeah, man, when AJ Styles jumped ship from New Japan Pro Wrestling, that shit was huge. That was a big story. I was marking out like a motherfucker when that name Phenomenal AJ Styles hit the Tron and he walked out with the hood up. Man, I marked out so much. I was never the biggest fan of AJ and TNA, but he had my respect by a mile, right? Like if I was going to say, who's the best in TNA or who's the best that's not in WWE, AJ's towards the top of that list, if not the top of the list at that time. And when he went to New Japan and got that top spot in the Bullet Club, he fucking shined. He showed just what a main eventer he could be. And that was really, I think, what really sold the WWE on bringing him in, even more than his time in TNA. Because in TNA, he was a big fish in a small pond, but the work that he did in New Japan showed this man is a main eventer. And when his music hit at the Royal Rumble in 2016, it was fucking magic. And you can check out Arn every single Tuesday, hosted by your man, Conrad Thompson. Check it out.
Hey, it's true. It's your Olympic hero, Kurt Angle. And the Kurt Angle Show will debut in February on Westwood One. Hit the subscribe button for the Kurt Angle Show.
The Kurt Angle Show, the newest wrestling podcast to hit the scene. Hosted by Conrad Thompson, as if he doesn't have enough podcasts on his plate. He's adding the Olympic gold medalist to his schedule. Definitely of course I'm going to check it out. It's my job here as a podcast journalist, but honestly, I'm not that interested in hearing what Kurt Angle has to say. I mean, maybe it'll be good. Maybe he's a great storyteller. I don't fucking know, but I can't say that I'm thrilled to death. I've never been the biggest fan of Kurt Angle. Mad respect. I take nothing away from him. in my opinion, one of the greatest of all time, bar none. Not just in the ring, but his comedy level, his promos, his personality. The man can really do no wrong. But to me, he was just, I don't know, it just never resonated with me, right? He wasn't like, oh, that's my guy. It was never even cared that much to see his matches, even though they're always good. I don't know, man. I'm just not a Kurt Angle guy. And the podcast, I know when Conrad had mentioned it earlier in the week that he was going to break the internet with an announcement and a podcast announcement. And I don't know if that's an internet breaker. Kurt Angle, I think they overestimated that one a bit, but we shall see. Maybe I'm just being a hater, right? Maybe the Kurt Angle podcast, Kurt Angle show, whatever the fuck, the Broken Freaking Neck podcast, maybe it'll be the greatest freaking podcast ever. So last week we talked about Will Hobbs on the AEW podcast, and he kind of told his story and such, but I gotta be 100% honest, he rubbed me just a little bit the wrong way. It's hard to put a finger on it, right? He just seemed, I don't know, maybe slightly in character, I guess, like a downplayed version of his heel character. And maybe that's exactly what it was, because he was on the Chris Jericho podcast this Friday, and his second podcast, and man, he just reached out to me in this podcast. Completely different interview. And it's weird because that was the AEW one, and it's unrestricted, so it's not meant to be a shoot, or I mean, it's not meant to be a work or anything. You don't need to do it in character. But I think maybe he was a little bit, or I don't know what the issue was. But with Chris, man, he just opened up, and I felt like I got to know a whole different side of Will Hobbs. You know, I've heard his story a couple times already, but this was the first time where he just seemed so genuine and so honest and humble as fuck. And it was just a really great interview. And this was the first time, even on TV, you know, like I've seen Will, and I've kind of been like, yeah, you know, I feel like maybe that was AEW was pushing him just a little bit too hard for me. Like, okay, he's okay, but after this interview, I think this man is destined for big time stardom in AEW. I don't think he's just a bit player. I don't think he's just a guy on Taz's team that's maybe getting a little bit of too big of a push, but I think I see what they see in him now. And it's not for me to judge it, you know, fuck what I think, but I'm just, I guess, making the observation that up until this interview, I seen Will Hobbs a certain way, and after this interview, I see him a completely different way. So for that, I think it's very important. Just go out, check out this one. Great interview. Chris, they just had a great conversation, and Chris really dug in and got to know Will on a different level.
And I'm like, golly, like, I want to work here. And then, you know, I go to the famous board and see who I'm supposed to work. And it says Will Hobbs versus Scorpio Sky. I go eat, come back and check the board. It says Will Hobbs versus Orange Cassidy. And I'm like, oh, shit.
Oh, they switched it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay.
Was that on Dark or was that on Dynamite?
It was on Dark.
Right.
And at this time, you and Orange like had that feud going. Right. So I'm thinking in my head, I'm working the hottest baby right now who's in the feud with the hottest heel. Mm-hmm. I'm like, this is about to be on. Then I look over at the time, it says 30 seconds.
Really?
I'm like, okay. I'm like, this is cool. I'm like, I figured what was coming. And, you know, I ran into Orange, and he's like, introduced himself to me, and he's like, hey, man, sorry about, you know, this, you know, and not getting a lot of time. I said, look, I was like, I'm here to do a job.
And that's what I'm talking about, the humbleness. He was all about it. You know, that's what I'm here for. He's aware, he's self-aware, he understands his position in the company, he's humble, he appreciates it, he shows respect. Man, he's just, I think his upside is huge. I really do. I think a lot. I think much more highly of him. You can catch Chris Jericho every Wednesday and every Friday. Goldberg. Goldberg. Goldberg was on the After the Bell podcast this week with Corey Graves and Vic Joseph. And Goldberg, a real humble guy. Check this out.
You got a lot of, world-class people surrounding you. To tell us some tales that won't get anybody in trouble.
Let me back up and just say that being Goldberg throughout these years has been the biggest honor in the world. I've been cast in a business that I didn't aspire to be in the beginning. I was a fan, but I'm a football player. And I was between a rock and a hard place. I had to make a career decision. And moving on to how lucky I am, I've been in the right place at the right time so many times throughout the years. Mainly, I say I've been in the right place at the right time because when I broke in, there were guys like Kurt Hennig. There were guys like the Steiner brothers. There were so many people who helped me when my back was up against the wall and everybody wanted a little piece of that blood, the Sharks.
Again, super humble. The whole podcast was just being very thankful and just happy to have been a part of it and to be a part of it. And, he kept saying right place, right time kind of thing. But, he did take our Bret Hart away from us. And for that, he should burn in hell. But he still seems like a pretty decent guy after all. You can check out After the Bell every single Thursday, Fridays, one of those days, towards the end of the week. Just look for it.
Still, my favorite job I've ever had, man. I swear to God. But I was there all the time. I witnessed this stuff happen all the time. I saw people's careers get made and destroyed on a whim. I would fight sometimes, and Vince would laugh. He would, there was I don't know. Can I tell it? I'll tell it. All right. Okay. So, this is going to be tricky. I got to cloud some of it or people figure out. Okay. So there was somebody who worked there when I worked there. This is tough. And they took charge of another division within the company, one that Vince didn't care as much about. And I noticed that the product they were purchasing were simply old products that this person had done and then simply put a different name attached to the product. So it was basically selling his own stuff to the company. And I knew what their budget was, and it was a lot. So we'll just throw out a number, $20 million, okay?
Sure.
And we're on the tarmac, and I said, Vince, this guy is just giving you stuff that it's already been rejected, and it's $5 million a pop. But that's $20 million, man. And he looks me dead in the face and he goes, Freddie, it's $20 million. Get on the fucking.
That was Freddie Prinze Jr. on the Insight podcast with Chris Van Vliet. They had an awesome conversation, and it's interesting to listen to writers. Anytime a writer has to talk about their time in WWE, I always get a kick out of that because it's just the insider, what it's like to work for Vince McMahon and work within that structure, especially on the creative team. But it's an even better perspective from Freddie because he's a celebrity, right? So he's there for fun. He doesn't need to make a career out of that. It's something he wants to do, somewhere he wants to be, because he could be anywhere, and he chose to be there. And it's fun to listen to his stories. He tells a lot of great stories whenever he does talk about wrestling. He's always interesting to listen to. Just good shit. I love these kind of interviews. Great insight, and Freddie's not afraid to, he doesn't hold back. He's always willing to talk about the business and his time there, and you can hear the passion in his voice and see it on his face. He's like a little kid just talking about the most amazing thing ever, and it's fun to see and great to listen to. Check out Chris Van Vliet, his podcast, Insight. It drops multiple times a week. Not always wrestlers on there, but he does try to sneak them in at least once or twice a week. So absolutely worth a listen. Chris always does great interviews, even though his teeth are disgustingly white and perfect. As always, thank you for taking the time to listen to the Pro Wrestling Podcast. My name is Seth Grimes, your humble host. Please seek me out on social media at Seth Grimes Media. Also, find this podcast on YouTube. Like the videos, follow, subscribe, click notify, whatever the fuck it asks you to do. Just do all that. Help me grow. I'm new. This is a new podcast. This is a new YouTube channel. This is a new everything. Help me grow. If you like what I'm doing, help me out. Tell a friend. Do something. If you don't like what I'm doing, tell me that too. Tell me to fuck off in the comments. I don't care. Interact with me. I'll interact with you back. Let's have some fun and talk about some wrestling. Thank you, everybody. Until next time.